Look at this front page of the American Weekly Mercury from November 24, 1720. It captures a British empire operating at an immense scale, balancing the wealth of global extraction against the logistical frictions of the 18th century world. A dispatch from Lisbon reports the arrival of the Brazil fleet. They are offloading millions in gold, thousands of chests of sugar, and over 100 enslaved people. The volume of goods pouring into European ports was massive, moving through a network of trade that stretched from the Americas to the Portuguese coast. This chart shows the speculative frenzy occurring in London at the same time. When the South Sea Company opened a new £1 million subscription, it was fully committed within hours. By that afternoon, investors were already trading those subscriptions at a 20% profit in the street. That appetite for capital reached all the way to the colonies. In New York, the local assembly was busy manipulating the local value of the lion dollar, a common Dutch coin, raising its official rate to 6 shillings to ensure their own tax revenues kept pace with the booming economy. The empire's wealth depended on a globally interconnected financial system, one where a spike in a London stock subscription or a change in currency value in New York influenced the flow of capital across the entire Atlantic. But just as trade was hitting these record highs, the World News section reported a sudden, terrifying disruption. An outbreak of plague in France was bringing European commerce to a standstill. Dispatches describe malignant fevers gripping the city of Marseille. The illness moved through the population so quickly that authorities were forced to lock down the city entirely, cutting off all communication and trade with the outside world. A letter printed in the Mercury details the consequences of that isolation. It describes a city in a deplorable condition, where the quarantine had triggered a famine so severe that many of the city's poorest residents were dying from a lack of food. To colonial readers, a plague in France was a direct threat to their own livelihoods. If the infection spread to British ports, it would trigger the same mandatory quarantines, effectively severing the shipping lanes that the American colonies relied on to survive. While disease threatened the ports, the shipping lanes themselves were under constant pressure from heavily armed pirate fleets. Off the coast of Terceira, a 40-gun pirate ship commanded by a man named Connor, or Condon, spotted a massive 72-gun Portuguese man-of-war. Instead of retreating, the pirates pulled alongside and demanded to know what ship it was, engaging in a high-stakes standoff with the much larger warship. Closer to home, the New York News reports that pirates were thick in the West Indies. A merchant vessel under John Thompson arrived after being plundered. The pirates didn't just take his cargo, they forcibly took 6 members of his crew to serve on their own ship. By 1720, the Crown viewed piracy as more than just a nuisance. These were militarized intercepts of the very trade routes that made the empire's expansion profitable. With disorder on the high seas, colonial governors enforced a strict, visible crackdown on any form of insubordination at home. In Philadelphia, 2 men were tried for simply speaking in contempt of King George. The court sentenced them to stand in the public pillory, pay a massive 20-mark fine, and endure the public humiliation of having their crimes posted on their chests. The paper also records the immediate punishment of 2 mutineers, Moses Shepherd and Robert Kearton. They were tied to the pillory and publicly whipped, a common but brutal method of asserting the law's reach. These public, performative punishments served as clear signals of the state's authority. By making examples of those who spoke against the king or mutinied at sea, the colonial government aimed to ensure that local order was maintained for the sake of uninterrupted commerce. This local tension is best seen in the story that dominates the center of this issue, the execution of Edward Hunt. He wasn't sent to the gallows for violence, but for the crime of counterfeiting. Hunt was caught forging Spanish silver coins, like this 1717 real. In the early 1700s, these coins were vital to trade. They were the primary currency used to pay for the sugar, gold, and labor that moved the empire's wealth. To the British crown, a forged coin wasn't just a simple theft. It devalued the currency supply and threatened the stability of the colonial treasury. Because of this, counterfeiting foreign silver was prosecuted as high treason, a direct attack on the king's sovereignty. Hunt's crime sat at the intersection of the empire's greatest fears. While the state was already struggling to protect its merchant ships from pirates and its ports from plague, it could not allow its very money to be undermined from within. On the day of his execution, Hunt delivered a dying speech from the scaffold. The editors of the Mercury chose to print it almost in its entirety. Hunt made a desperate plea, arguing he was put to death for unknown laws he didn't understand. However, the newspaper editors included a warning at the top, stating they published his words to expose his falsehoods and correct the ill principles he spread. Even at the moment of his death, the state ensured that Hunt's final question, asking what anyone could possibly gain from his execution, was answered by the paper's own framing. In an Atlantic world connected by trade but threatened by illness and piracy, the 1720 American Mercury was more than a source of news. It was a tool of the administration, a public record showing that the price of disrupting the imperial machine was the loss of one's life.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print, no modern gloss, no modern